This case concerns the fate of Lauren Agee, a 21-year-old woman with a bright future ahead of her, who died under mysterious circumstances. She disappeared in the middle of the night at a lakeside festival, only to be discovered the next afternoon, face down and lifeless in the water. Almost immediately, an investigation by the local DeKalb County Sheriff's Office concluded that Lauren's death was accidental, probably due to a fall off a cliff into the lake while intoxicated. Foul play is ruled out, but few people besides the county police believe that Lauren's death was accidental drowning caused by a fall into the lake. There are certainly many suspicious aspects to the case. The mystery of the case hasn't let up in over 4 years. What actually happened to Lauren Agee that fateful day? Was it indeed a tragic accident on the lake? Or was it more than that? Was there foul play involved? This video will offer some insight into the mysterious death of this young woman. Lauren was born in Mississippi and lived in Hendersonville, Tennessee with her mother, stepfather, and 3 siblings. She was a bright young woman, popular, close to her family, with an exciting future ahead of her. Lauren had won a dancing scholarship to college, then changed her mind and transferred to Vol State to study criminal justice. Rather ironically, given how her case became quite sensational, Lauren had plans to go into the CSI field or law enforcement. Her mother, Sherry Smith, would say of Lauren, quote, "She had a knack for science and solving mysteries. She was very intuitive." In mid-July 2015, Lauren told her mother, Sherry, she wanted to go to Wakefest, a 3-day wakeboarding tournament near Nashville, Tennessee, which was basically a wild party on Center Hill Lake. Her mother wasn't keen on the festival or Lauren's choice of companion, Hannah Palmer, who Sherry felt was a fair-weather friend. She couldn't tell her adult daughter what to do, but would later recount, "As a mom, I just really had this bad feeling." Sherry explains how they exchanged big hugs not once, but twice before Lauren drove away. It would be the last time she saw her daughter alive. Hannah and Lauren traveled to Wakefest in high spirits, documenting their trip on social media. Once at the festival, the girls met up with Hannah's new boyfriend, Aaron Lilly, and his friend, Christopher Stout. The 2 young men were thrill seekers and spent the day wakeboarding on the lake. This was Lauren and Christopher's first meeting. Cassie Franks, Lauren's high school friend and Aaron's ex-girlfriend, who was also at Wakefest, recalled Christopher being very flirtatious with Lauren, but she was not reciprocating. This was Lauren's first day at Wakefest, July 25th. Lauren was under the impression that she and Hannah would be staying in a cabin on the lake. However, she soon discovered that the group of 4 would all be sleeping outdoors at a campsite precariously located on a cliff. The cliff near Patesford Marina is a vertigo-inducing 90 feet or 27 meters above the lake on one side, with a 45-foot drop or 13.5 meters down the other. To reach their campsite, the 4 had to canoe across the lake, then use a rope to pull themselves up the steep cliff. There was a tent for Aaron and Hannah, and a large hammock for Lauren and Christopher to share. Photos of the hammock show it strung up between 2 trees and literally hanging off the cliff. This photo of Lauren and Christopher in the hammock is believed to be one of the last ever taken of Lauren. The 4 set up the camp and headed back to the marina for the evening. There were 2 ways to get back: retracing their steps or jumping from lower down the cliff into the water. There were jagged rocks half submerged in the lake. However, cliff jumping was a regular occurrence at Wakefest, so despite the dangers, the 4 young people decided to do it. They jumped, and Lauren allegedly hit her head on a rock when she landed in the water, causing her to briefly black out, a sign of a possible concussion. Nevertheless, with a 21-year-old's resilience, Lauren carried on partying. After an evening of drinking, between midnight and 2 a.m., the friends made the perilous journey back to the outcrop where they were staying. Lauren didn't want to go. She asked Cassie if she could stay with Cassie's group instead, but there was no room in that cabin. Lauren's friend Jade was at home when Lauren texted her, asking her to come and get her because she wasn't having a good time. Jade tried to call her back repeatedly, but Wakefest had poor cell phone reception, and her calls never reached Lauren. Hannah, Aaron, and Christopher would tell police they awoke to no sign of Lauren, even though her shoes, cell phone, and other personal belongings were still under the hammock. The 3 stated they were all drunk when they returned to the campsite, and that Lauren had fallen asleep in the hammock shared with Christopher. They had heard and seen nothing of her after about 3 a.m. At about 4:45 that afternoon, a fisherman and his son were fishing on the lake. In the cove, they spotted a pair of pink shorts and soon discovered Lauren's lifeless body face down in the water. They reported it to Chris Yarchuk, an out-of-town police officer working security at the festival, who immediately headed to the scene. While Yarchuk and the fisherman were trying to retrieve Lauren's body, a canoe paddled past. It was Christopher and Aaron, who Yarchuk claims called over something to the effect of, "Hey, is that our friend?" Ryan Melanson was also working security at the festival. Like Yarchuk, he was an off-duty cop from White County working a side gig. Despite not being from the local force, they both went into investigative mode when faced with a dead body. The policemen had strong doubts about the case and what they themselves had observed during the day she was found. Yarchuk would later state how he noticed a lot of trauma and blood on the back of Lauren's head on her left side and her shoulder area. He even noticed what looked like a bite mark on her chest. That's why he suggested the investigating police perform an assault kit on Lauren. Officer Yarchuk showed his skepticism by saying, quote, "I know she didn't drown. People that drown sink. She was floating." Melanson and Yarchuk felt that Lauren's friends didn't make much of an effort to find her. The 3 said they assumed Lauren had headed back to the marina, even though all of her belongings remained underneath the hammock. When questioned, Hannah, Aaron, and Christopher gave different accounts of what happened, and their stories kept changing. Employees at the marina, Deanna and Harry Elder, also interacted with the 2 young men and young woman. They found their conduct strange, even unsettling. Harry would recall their whole concern was about going home. At one point, Hannah claimed that Lauren had gotten into a boat with an unknown man, which Deanna knew sounded completely bogus. The local DeKalb County investigators then arrived, questioned festival goers, and examined Lauren's injuries. The autopsy showed that Lauren's body had blunt force trauma, broken fingers, a broken nose, bruising and hemorrhaging on her back and thighs, double the legal limit of alcohol in her bloodstream, but surprisingly, very little water in her lungs. However, theoretically, certain people can drown without water in their lungs, known as dry drowning, although it is quite rare. Nevertheless, DeKalb County authorities ruled Lauren had died from blunt force trauma and possible drowning and closed her case after a 2-month investigation. They decided that Lauren had fallen off the cliff, suffered blunt force trauma, and landed in the water, where she must have drowned. This sounded plausible until you consider the current in the lake was moving away from the cove where Lauren's body was found. There was also so much vegetation down the side of the cliff that she would have invariably gotten tangled up and caught before she reached the water. Strangely, autopsy photos show an odd, downward-pointing triangle imprint on Lauren's chest, exactly the shape of the molded metal tip on the front of Aaron and Christopher's canoe. DeKalb County officers said that this injury matched something in the rescue boat which carried her body to shore, but Yarchuk argued that triangle was a 90-degree angle, not pointing downward. The imprint on Lauren's body also displayed a smaller triangle inside the large triangle, which seemingly did match Aaron and Christopher's canoe. Those who don't buy the official version of how Lauren died believe she may have been dumped from a canoe into the water. If this wasn't the case, then what could have caused the strange imprint? Sherry received a call from DeKalb County alerting her that Lauren was in the hospital, and when she arrived, she was informed of her daughter's death. She was dismayed to be told that Lauren's companions had been questioned and let go. Sherry's dismay turned to anger when she discovered that no one had reported Lauren as missing. In fact, it's understood the three had stayed at the lake that Sunday after Lauren's body was found and continued to party. Chris Stout even posted on Instagram later that day after Lauren's death with a bizarre comment, "Best weekend ever." Sherry would claim that Hannah, who'd been a longtime friend of Lauren's, as well as Aaron and Christopher, never appeared to grieve, mourn, or even shed a tear for her daughter. None of them attended Lauren's funeral, and Hannah left town barely a month after Lauren's death. Feeling let down by the DeKalb County Police, Lauren's family hired private investigator Sheila Wysocki to conduct her own inquiry. Wysocki found something in her autopsy that was never mentioned in the initial report. Lauren had hemorrhaging in her throat. Wysocki said, "I believe something was happening to Lauren and she was either trying to get away or fighting, and that's where her head was hit, blunt force trauma, and I believe that's how she actually died. I believe she went backwards trying to get away, hit her head, and fell down the ledge. She has bruising on her thighs. Her nose is broken, so there are a lot of injuries that absolutely don't add up to a fall off a cliff into the water. She's got broken fingers, which would be consistent with a fall, but it's also consistent with somebody fighting. The significance to me of the bruising on the thighs initially was someone putting their knees on a person, holding them down." With all this evidence of assault, Wysocki was exasperated by the inadequacy of the DeKalb investigation. The list of things the police failed to do was astounding. Firstly, no assault kit was ever ordered. The investigating detective admitted he didn't listen to any 911 calls. Key texts were erased from Lauren's phone, and recordings were never made of interviews with witnesses. And it gets worse. The crime scene wasn't even cordoned off, and the scene was trampled on. It was also not properly searched as a potential crime scene should be, nor was any evidence numbered or bagged, itself a huge breach of police protocol. Furthermore, not a single DNA test was conducted, including any samples taken from under Lauren's fingernails. To this day, Sherry doesn't know what happened to her daughter's backpack, sleeping bag, or any of the clothes she packed for the weekend. So in 2016, Sherry hired former federal prosecutor Alex Little to bring a $10 million lawsuit for wrongful death against Hannah Palmer, Aaron Lilly, and Christopher Stout. All three had to give depositions, but all three chose to plead the fifth. In 2017, a witness came forward about the night of Lauren's death. Chris Brown was with his wife, daughter, and daughter's boyfriend at the marina when they saw a young man swimming toward the dock at midnight. People usually traveled by boat in that part of the lake, so it was very dangerous to swim, especially in the dead of night. The man climbed up on the dock, coughing up water, saying he had nearly drowned searching for his friends. Chris Brown's description of the man and his clothing was a match for Aaron Lilly. This would be damning evidence, however, eyewitnesses saw Lauren leaving the marina alive and well at 2 a.m. But it's another detail of an eventful night and worth further examination. And yet DeKalb County showed no interest in reopening the investigation, even after Lauren's family and friends presented them with a petition of 10,000 signatures. At this stage, Lauren's family and friends had several theories about what happened to Lauren, and they were frustrated the authorities were pursuing none of them. DeKalb officers always maintained that Lauren got up in the middle of the night, fell off the cliff, and landed injured in the water where she drowned. This all sounded possible apart from the fact the DeKalb officer, Chris Yarchuk, and Sheila Wysocki all performed experiments with a dummy the size and weight of Lauren, which they threw down the cliff repeatedly, none of them managing to land the dummy in the water. Chris Yarchuk even tried the experiment from the middle of the cliff to see if the dummy would make it to the bottom of the cliff. It did not. Even if you accept the police claim that Lauren landed in the water and drowned, as previously mentioned, her body ended up in the cove, despite the current in the lake moving away from this cove. Another theory is that Lauren could have later died from the head injury she sustained when cliff jumping earlier in the day. Did her companions maybe panic and put her in the water to avoid blame, and in doing so cause the strange triangular mark on Lauren's chest? Or did one of the men assault Lauren and kill her to cover their tracks? They both had criminal records, and Aaron Lilly's was for domestic violence. In March 2017, a judge ruled there wasn't enough evidence for Sherry's suit against Hannah to proceed, but the lawsuits against Aaron and Christopher are still ongoing. Aaron and Hannah are now married and living in South Florida, while Christopher Stout is currently in jail for parole violation with 2 pending DUI charges. DeKalb County Sheriff Patrick Ray and District Attorney Bryant Dunaway have refused to reopen the case, but Sheila Wysocki endeavors to keep Lauren's case in the public eye with her podcast, Without Warning. Sherry continues to fight for justice for her daughter. As she says, "I'm her voice. As her mother, I have to be her voice, and I have to pursue the truth because I owe that to her, right? I'm all she had, and she would expect nothing less from me." That is the mysterious case of Lauren Agee, the 21-year-old woman who died mysteriously at Wakefest in 2015, and her companions who continuously refused to answer questions about that night. Are Aaron Lilly, Christopher Stout, and Hannah Palmer responsible for her death? Or do they at least know what happened to her? What would the DeKalb authorities have discovered if they had investigated her death as meticulously as they should have?